Hello class, today we are going to look at section 2.2, inverse variation. So yesterday we talked about direct variation and we talked about how it's y equal k times x to the n. So we're always using multiplication. We also said direct variation is as one variable increases, the other variable increases. So today we need to make sure we recognize the difference between direct and inverse. Inverse variation, on the other hand, is as one variable increases, the other variable decreases. So they work opposite of each other. Because of this, the function we are going to use is y equals k divided by x to the n. So we're still using all the same components, but instead of multiplication with inverse variation, because they work opposite each other, we're going to use division. K still cannot equal 0, and n still must be positive or greater than 0, just like yesterday. Okay, again, the things we're going to do are actually very similar, so if you understood yesterday, you should be able to make the jump to today. First, the language of inverse variation. It either varies inversely or is inversely proportional. So just like yesterday, we had a couple different ways we could use vocabulary to describe direct variation. There's a couple of different ways we could talk about inverse variation. I want you to take a second, pause this, and try to see if you can answer examples 1 and 2, and all you're trying to do is take the statement and write it as an inverse variation equation. Now I'll give you the answers. So if Q varies inversely, I start with the Q. Varies inversely means that immediately it's going to be K over something. Don't forget your K. And then as the square of D. So my variable is D, and I'm going to square it. The second one, you should have A. And again, because it's inversely proportional. You see the difference between example 1 and 2, but they mean the same thing. As soon as I see inversely proportional, I do K divided by. And then to the square of the variable T, so it's just T squared. Again, yesterday, these words said directly, and so we were doing multiplication. So the key now is these problems will be mixed together. So if it says inversely, make sure you divide. If it says directly, make sure you multiply. Try a couple more examples here, and then check to make sure you're right. So you should have gotten y varies inversely. That's k divided by the 5th power of x, so x to the 5th. And finally, w is inversely proportional, so k divided by to the cube of z cubed. Again, as we keep going now, today's homework even will have a mixture of inversely and directly proportional. So just make sure you read the problems very carefully, because it will definitely change your answer. Just like yesterday, we also need to be able to write the variation equation in words. So take a second and see if you can do that. Remember, it's your choice as to whether you use varies inversely or inversely proportional. So hopefully you paused it and were able to come up with something. The first one, I'm going to use inversely proportional. So I said A. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to use varies inversely. A varies inversely as the cube of B. And the second one, I'll use the other. So D is inversely proportional to the 4th power of R. So again, you could either have used varies inversely in both or inversely proportional in both, or you could have mixed it up like I did. Same thing. Finally today, the last thing we need to look at, now that we get the language and going from the language to an equation and an equation to a language, now we need to be able to do the big picture problems. I do want you to take a moment to try following the 4-step process from yesterday to solve this before you watch me walk through it. So once again, pause it, try it, and then watch me go through the answer. Remember, this is a 4-step process. The first step is to write an equation. And that is what we've been doing. So that usually entails the first part. So step 1, I do like to label my steps. You don't have to, but it just keeps it organized. So I've got y varies inversely, so k divided by as x cubed. So they didn't even say the cube of x, they actually put the x cubed there. So I'm done with that part. So step 1 is always writing the formula or equation. Step 2 is when we need to find our k value. Okay, so if y equals 12 when x equals 5. So for step 2, they're always going to give you a pair that goes together. So for step 2, they said y equals 12, so I'm going to substitute that. I do not know k, that's my whole job in step 2. When x equals 5, and don't forget it was x cubed, so 5 cubed. Now I need to be able to solve. I've got 12 equals k divided by 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Now I need to get rid of the denominator, so since I'm dividing, I will always multiply by that. So I multiply both sides by 125, so this is just algebra skills. And 125 times 12 is 1500. So my k is 1500. Step 3 is just to take that k and your equation in step 1. So virtually you combine step 1 and 2. I have y equals, instead of the k on top, now I substitute it with the 1500. Because for this particular scenario, that k is always going to be 1500. And now I can choose any x's and y's to continue to figure out how this relationship works. In this problem, they particularly say that for step 4, they want me to find the value, to do highlighter, to find the value of y when x equals 2. So we need to take, this will be step 3, 4. Step 3 doesn't have a highlighted color. Step 4 says they give me x equals 2, so I'm going to solve for y equals 1500 divided by x is now 2 cubed. So I can do that algebra. 1500 stays the same. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And 1500 divided by 8 is 187.5. Since it is not a real world situation, I don't need to label it, and I am done. So now again, in tonight's homework, you're going to have to be able to do a couple of things. First, you're going to have to be able to write the equations and the language, but they may mix it up in terms of if they're saying varies inversely or directly. So the big point of today is to make sure that you're recognizing the difference between each. Just like with this example, you'll have to be able to do these bigger problems, the 4-step problems, for inversely related, but again, there could be directly related in there as well, so just make sure you're reading carefully. And finally, now that we know both, I also want to make sure that you recognize that you're thinking about the difference between direct and inverse, and that is direct means as one goes up, the other goes up, and inverse is as one goes up, the other goes down. So they'll give you some real-world situations, and you're going to talk about whether it's inverse or direct or neither, which means neither would mean it doesn't have that relationship. Direct would be, for example, the more I study, the better I do on a test. Inverse would be the more I eat, the less hungry I get. So as one goes up, the other goes up. So as I eat, or as one goes up, the other goes down. So as I eat more, my hunger goes down. One goes up, one goes down. And back to the studying example of direct, that would be like the more I study, so that's going up, the higher my test grade is, that goes up. So those would be more directly related. Good luck on your homework assignment tonight, and then tomorrow we will jump into 2-4. We are going to skip 2-3 until I get back. Have a good night.